When in reality, I'd say I think the Genesis account is the account of what happened during the flood. Okay? Where do you get off saying that, Chip? I mean, where's your evidence? I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. So first, I'm going to briefly review what we did last week. Just review. Who were the sons of God and that produced the Nephilim? First of all, what does Nephilim mean?
Great ones.
Great ones. The word Nephil just simply means great in Hebrew. Whenever you see a word in Hebrew that ends in im, it's the same thing as s in English. Cat, cats. Bottle, bottles. What's the difference between bottle and bottles? More than one, right? It's plural. Nephil, a great one. Nephilim, great ones, more than one. Got it? M in Hebrew is like S in English. It just pluralizes the noun. Okay? Now, the two theories are that these sons of God were angels, fallen angels in specific, that intermingled with humans to produce a mutant race. That's one theory. The other one is the one that's supported by Jeff Cavins and Tim Gray in the book that I'm having you read, as well as the main theory in their commentary that I have you read. Both books talk about the other theory, but they hold more to this, and that's the idea that the sons of God are the holy line of Seth, Adam and Eve's third son that's mentioned, and that the daughters of men are the wicked line of Cain. And when they intermingled, it polluted the whole race, in the sense that the good couldn't outweigh the evil, and wickedness filled the earth. And that's what caused the flood. That's what brought the judgment of the flood onto the earth. Okay? So those are the two theories. I have always believed and have leaned towards the first, but as I mentioned, both theories have their problems and their strengths. Both theories have problems and strengths. Neither one absolutely cinches it, if you ask me. Neither one of them. There's like questions, serious ones. Like for the first one, how do angels mate with humans? They're not even physical. How do you do that? Okay? So you have a problem with that theory, don't you? Okay, there you are. Well, what about the second one? The problem I have with the second one is that nowhere in the Old Testament are righteous men called sons of God. That is a title only given in the New Testament. Whenever the phrase sons of God is used in the Old Testament, it's always referring to angels. Always. So why would it be different here? That's my problem with the second theory. The strength of the second theory is that it makes better sense in the overall picture of the plan of God. Because from the time that Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, the whole idea was the first promise that he made. The seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head. So there would be the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and they would be forever in enmity towards each other. They would for always be at odds. Okay? And this makes sense when you have the wicked line of Cain, the wicked son who murdered his brother, and then the godly son, Seth, who was in the image and likeness of his father, Adam. So you see that parallelism and that theme of the two different races of man, if you will, the godly line and the ungodly line. It's going to be a theme that carries on for the rest of the Bible. All the way to the book of Revelation, where you have the woman and the dragon. Her offspring and the offspring of the dragon. Constantly at war. Okay? So I think that that is a very strong theological point to make as to what these sons of God were. The strong suit for the first one is that this is the tradition that the Jews had developed. The whole book of Enoch, as I showed you, is all about how it was just assumed that these sons of God were angels that somehow intermingled and interbred with humans that produced giants, these monsters that actually were plaguing the human race before the flood. And God saw that this was getting out of control and put a stop to it. And what was the stop? The flood. And he bound these angels that had done this wicked thing in chains of darkness, never to do such a dastardly deed again to the human race. For what purpose, Chip? Why would they do this? Has to do with the salvation of humankind. The first promise that God made to Adam and Eve is that the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head. Well, if you contaminate the seed of the woman, you contaminate the human race, then that Messiah, that progeny won't come, and the human race will be forever doomed. Because angels are irredeemable. We mentioned that. So if you can blend them together, then you create this human-angel hybrid that becomes irredeemable in God's justice. And that thwarts the plan of God. Now that makes sense from the position of Satan. If I can thwart the plan of God, then I win. And God is, of course, not to be thwarted. So he just wipes out the whole human race that's wicked and starts all over again. That's the purpose of the flood. Okay, so that's a strength in the first opinion. Okay? Which also fits in with certain other elements in the scriptures, both Old and New Testament. Okay? So, there you are. Take the theories. There you go. Now, how long did it take Noah to build the ark? Anyone remember?
360 days? 360?
Huh? 120 years, according to Genesis.
360 is it?
He started when, there's actually two ideas. It took him exactly 100 years or 120 years. 100 years comes from Genesis 5 and Genesis 7. Genesis 5:32 says that Noah was 500 years old when God first came to him to build the ark. By the time it was finished, he was 600 years old. So 600 minus 500, 100 years. Now in Genesis 6:3 though, it says that God numbered the days of man to 120 years. So many theologians say that what this is referring to is not only abbreviating the longevity of humankind from that point on, but also gives them the amount of time that God gave the earth before the coming of the flood. So that's where the 120 years comes from. I kind of lean towards that. Okay? I kind of lean towards that. So this also not begs the question. It tells us an important thing. Whether it was 100 or 120 years, it tells us that God is patient in the story. 100 years Noah preaches building the ark as a testimony against a wicked world. And how many converts did he get?
Zero.
None. Except his own family. None. Which tells us what the condition of the world was at that time. It was not only wicked, it was very wicked. It had no care for God, no desire for repentance. And so when the flood came, there you are. Yes?
Could they also have been rounding? Would they have been able to round back then that 120 is closer to 100 years than saying something else? Or
It could be. It could be. That's a possibility. Yeah.
Chip,
Yes.
I feel sorry for all the people there, because according to what you said, they did not know what rain was.
Yes. Yes. And so they just thought Noah was a crazy old fool building this enormous boat on dry land because water is going to fall from the sky and destroy us all. That's That's what God said. Yeah, I know, Noah. Have some warm goat's milk and go to bed. You'll feel better. That's the reaction. Remember? And see, we look at it and we go, rain. Of course we know what rain is, you know. But as I mentioned, if you look at the story just literally as it is written, the story tells you back in the Garden of Eden, water didn't come from the sky to water the earth. It came from under the earth to water it. So rain didn't come in the primeval world according to the book of Genesis. And I said the equivalent today would be, is if God came to Chris, and he told Chris, look, the world has gotten way too wicked. I'm going to wipe them all out. I want you to build me a steel warehouse because marbles are going to fall from the sky and completely destroy everyone. Marbles are going to fall from the sky and destroy everyone. Yes, Chris, I know. Good, Chris, good. Walk away slowly, smiling and nodding. Right? What if some fool started building a warehouse out of steel because God told him that the world's going to be destroyed by marbles falling from the sky? What would you think? Right. That's what Noah was up against. And by the way, that not only tells me how much of a lack of faith there was in there, it also tells me how strong Noah's faith was, that he had heard from God. And it wasn't just too much pepperoni pizza the night before. Right? Noah was convinced that he had heard from God, and he started this project. What does that tell you about the faith of this one man? One man in the whole world. Because in the end, who is right?
Noah.
Noah. So who's laughing now? Right, Noah. Who's laughing now at who? Got it? It is as true as I believe it is. Noah was an incredible man of faith. Before there was sacraments, before there was Judaism, before anything, this man believed God so well that he obeyed him for over 100 years, building him this boat that he said. That alone, forget the flood, the fact that he obeyed God for 100 years, I can't obey God for after I leave confession. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but I leave confession, and before I get to the parking lot, I have an impure thought, or I'm angry at someone, or it's like, really? I just left the freaking confessional. Now I have to go back. Are you kidding me? What's wrong with me? This man obeyed God for 100 years building this ark. See, we have to think about this. Think about this. This isn't just a fairy tale. This was a real person like you and I. And if that's the case, this is a remarkable story of faith that I wish I had. I don't know about you, but I wish I had that kind of faith and obedience in God. 100 years of obedience. There you go. Now we'll get to some of the new stuff. And I really don't know how much of this I'm going to show, but I'm going to try and get to it. Because there's a couple of videos I wanted you to see from evangelical Christians that have done a lot of research into this field. And I think help explain both the science and possibilities of what the flood was and did to our earth that you may not have thought of. So, first of all, how large was Noah's ark? Answer, very.
Next.
Yeah, next, right. Just to give you some idea, here's a modern comparison of what the ark would have been like. Compared to a football field,
Submarine.
a 747, and a modern day nuclear submarine. According to the Bible, if we take the dimensions in the Bible literally, okay, well, how big was it? Well, let's read it. Because God didn't mince words. He told them exactly how big to build the ark. He didn't say, oh, just build me a boat. He said, no, I want it this big. Chapter 6, verse 14. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you're to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its breadth, 50 cubits. And its height, 30 cubits. Well, what the blank is a cubit? A cubit is the distance between your fingertips and your elbow. Fingertips and elbow. So 1 cubit, 2 cubits, 3 cubits. Got it? How big was the ark? 300 of these. Translate roughly, if you consider a cubit being about 18 inches long, in modern terminology, the ark would have been 450 feet long, 75 feet high, and 50 feet wide. Or 75 feet wide and 50 feet high. That may be more like it. By the way, those of you who are aware of nautical, what do you call it? A buoyancy? The ark has a perfect 6-to-1-to-1 ratio. Perfect. The boat would have looked more like this picture rather than the ones that you typically see, you know, a nice cute little boaty thing like that. Because I don't think Noah had the time to make little curls at the end and stuff like that. He said, make it this, by this, by this. It's a huge box. What it was a barge. It was an enormous oil tanker. Oil tankers